Now here's a good one. Article 7, Section 2. Indigenous people have the collective right to live in freedom, peace, and security as distinct peoples and shall not be subject to any act of genocide or any other act of violence, including forcibly removing children of the group to another group. Now think about that. You have DCFS or Department of Children's Social Services removing your children from your homes as so-called blacks, and there's basically nothing you can do about it. They'll come at you with WIC 300 of the Welfare Code, and they use this every day. But before they can do this, and if you don't believe me, check it out for yourself. Go into their courts, it's posted all around. They're going to give you a document to sign. You may not know what you're signing because your public pretender just has you signing off on stuff. But the first thing they're going to ask you is, do you belong to any Native American tribe or any Indian tribe? Why? Because they're going to have to deal with you differently, people. Now here's where it gets good. Article 28. Indigenous people have the right to redress, look up redress, by means that can include restitution, or when this is not possible, just, fair, and equitable compensation for the land, territories, and resources which they have traditionally owned or otherwise occupied or used, and which have been confiscated, taken, occupied, used, or damaged without their free, prior, and informed consent. So now you see why they don't want you to know about this. Remember those usurped lands? You see? So what you're doing is you're taking it out of the domestic fight in their domestic U.S. courts under the caste label of so-called black. And you're coming under your indigenous heritage so that you can be included. And this is one way to link yourself with the human family or the international world, is through your indigenous heritage. And understand what that means. This means your original name prior to slavery. This means your original name prior to being labeled Negro, Black, Colored, Indian, Mulatto, Sambo, Quadroon, Octoquadroon. You have a right to this. Now let's look a little bit further. Article 31. Indigenous people have the right to maintain, control, protect, and develop their cultural heritage, traditional knowledge, traditional culture, cultural expressions, as well as the manifestation of their sciences, technologies, and culture, including human and genetic resources, seeds, medicine, knowledge of properties of fauna and flora, oral traditions, literature, design, sports, traditional games, visual and performance arts. They also have the right to maintain, control, protect, and develop their intellectual property over such cultural heritage, traditional knowledge, and traditional cultural expressions. How many times have so-called black people's culture been exploited and adopted, and people are getting rich off so-called black culture every day, and we see no part in it? Now, as if anyone has to tell us that we have these rights, let's just, for the sake of argument, let's listen to it. Article 34. Indigenous people have the right to promote, develop, and maintain their institutional structures and their distinctive customs, spirituality, traditions, procedures, practices, in the case where they exist, judicial systems or customs in accordance with international human rights standards. And Article 35, Indigenous people have the right to determine the responsibilities of the individuals of their communities. We're talking about freedom, folks. You want to be free, you have to govern yourselves. And how would you govern yourselves? You govern yourselves according to the way your ancient forefathers laid it down, your system, your structure. But how will you know that unless you research your heritage? Now, you can try to jump all the way back to Africa, and like I said, if you have the time and the resources to do that, you go back 10,000 years to find out you're related to such and such pharaoh, but it's no need to do that. You start with your mother, her mother, her mother, and her mother, and when you go back just a few generations, you're going to discover your Native American heritage. Now understand, when I say Native American heritage, remember, we're talking about indigenous. We're talking about pyramid culture that goes all the way back. We're talking about the Middle Ages, when Moorish government was erected. We're going from that point. Before Columbus so-called discovered America, before the European set foot on these shores with the ability to be able to colonize it and usurp the lands the way they have done. So in closing, people, I want to read from Article 15 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This is just the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It applies to everyone. Article 15, it says, everyone has the right to a nationality. Section 2, Article 15, no one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his nationality, nor the right to change his nationality. Now, we know that no one can change a man from his descendant nature. So when it's referring to changing nationality, it's dealing with this new nation-state type concept. But nevertheless, everyone has the right to a nationality. So answer me this: why do so-called black people not have one? Do you know what your nationality is? Black is not a nationality. Negro, colored, African, Afro, African American, these are not nationalities. American is not your nationality in the sense that you are a citizen of the United States government, because if it was, then you wouldn't have to have your voting rights renewed every 25 years. You enjoy a temporary status and a caste status, a slave status. Remember, black is a term not unlike mulatto, colored, octoquadroon, quadroon, sambo. If you don't know these terms, look them up, because they were used less than 100 years ago. Like I said, it's on my grandmother's birth certificate. So this indigenous information is important for you, and it's a movement, it's a revolution, and they don't really want you to know about this information. They don't want you to know that it applies to you.